All right, guys, David Dodge, the discount property investor. In this video, I am going to talk about how I bought my very first rental property. And before we get started, guys, I really encourage you to subscribe to my channel. Comment down below saying that I subscribe to enter this month's shout out giveaway. We shout out one lucky person every month who subscribes and comments saying I subscribed. Now, let's jump in. How I bought my first rental property. So as of today, the day that I'm recording this video, I'm 35 years old. I own over 50 rental properties to date. However, I had to buy one in order to get started, the very first one. And this video is going to talk about what I did and how I went about finding that very first property that I acquired as a rental. So when I first started, I was actually only 21 years old and I was going to college. I went to the University of Missouri in Columbia, which is right smack dab in the middle of the United States, in the middle of Missouri. And I loved going to college. It was a great time in my life. But I decided at a very young age that I didn't want to work my entire life. I wanted to be financially free at a young age. Well, luckily for me, at the age of 35, I am now financially free. I no longer have to work for money. I have investments and assets that pay me enough money every month that it covers all of my expenses. So how did I get started almost 15 years ago investing into real estate? Well, as a college student, I realized that everybody has to live somewhere. Everybody has to have a home. And the majority of my friends were living in apartments or they were renting houses around the college where we lived, and they had roommates. So what I did is I went and I found a local real estate agent who's a friend and a partner today, but at the time he was just an agent. And he helped me find a nice home that had 4 bedrooms and I think it had 3 bathrooms. And I made an offer on that piece of real estate. I purchased that 4-bedroom home for $165,000. Now, this is about 15 years ago. At the time, I didn't have a whole lot of money. And back then, I didn't know anything about buying properties at a discount. I didn't know anything about marketing to motivated sellers. I didn't know anything about wholesaling or what that even meant. So what I did was I got the agent, we went and found some properties, and I was really looking for a 4-bedroom home because what I wanted to do was a simple strategy called house hacking. And house hacking essentially just means that you buy a home and you rent out all the additional bedrooms and you shoot to make off those additional bedrooms enough income to pay the mortgage. And that's exactly what I did in my scenario. I found a 4-bedroom house. I rented out the additional 3 bedrooms that I wasn't living in to my friends. Those individuals paid me rent every month, and the amount of rent that I collected from those 3 individuals paid my entire mortgage payment. So I essentially got to live rent-free. Now, we all chipped in on utilities and groceries, and of course, you're going to have that no matter what. But the cost of the mortgage or the cost of the of living in that home month to month was actually paid for by the other 3 individuals that lived with me. Very, very cool strategy called house hacking. So let's back up a minute though. How did I go about finding this house? Well, I found a neighborhood that I really liked. It was a good neighborhood. It had good people living there. It didn't have high crime. It was close to the university. And I knew that I wanted to live there for one, but if I were to move out of the home, which I did after about 2 years, that I wouldn't have trouble renting it because the rest of the neighborhood was good. It had enough bedrooms to support a decent sized group of people. So we located a house. And then we made an offer on the house via the real estate agent. Nowadays, I make offers directly, but back then I didn't really know much about real estate. So I had my agent help me locate the property. At that point in time, we had a property that made sense and we got our offer accepted. So then I went to a bank and I asked the bank for a loan. The bank said, hey, no problem. If you put down 20% on this piece of property, we will loan you the additional 80%. And I did a video just recently about the value of leverage and how leverage in real estate is one of the most powerful tools that you have at your disposal. So again, I went to a bank, I told them what I wanted to buy, and they said, no problem, Dave. If you can come up with 20%, we will give you a loan for the additional 80%. And that is freaking awesome, guys. It is so awesome. So I didn't even have the 20% that I needed. So what I did was I went to my family. I went to some friends. I went to my grandparents. I went to some aunts and uncles. And I said, hey guys, I need to raise this 20% so I can get the other 80%. I didn't even have any of that money. And I pooled together from a couple of friends and family, I think it was roughly around $30,000 to $35,000 that I needed to buy the home, which essentially was only 20% of the $165,000. The bank gave me the difference. My agreement with my friends and family was, hey, let me borrow this money. I'm going to pay interest to you. I'm going to pay a 10% annual interest to you. And I'll pay that interest monthly, but I also want to pay this loan off really quick. I don't want this loan to go on for 5 or 10 years. I want to have this loan paid off in 18 to 24 months. So essentially 2 years or less. And sure enough, all through college, I worked really, really hard. And I saved up additional money that I wasn't using for my food and my utilities and all that type of good stuff, going out with friends. And I paid back these individuals, these friends, these family members that had loaned me the money. So I essentially didn't have any money when I bought the house. I got a loan from friends and family to come up with the 20%, which the bank kind of looks at as skin in the game. And then they gave me the additional 80% at closing to purchase that property. So the very first property that I bought almost 15 years ago at this point, I still own that property. It is still rented out. Now, when I lived there and I was using the house hacking strategy, the amount of rent that I was collecting from the additional 3 bedrooms was about the exact same as my mortgage, which also had my taxes and insurance escrowed into that payment. So I wouldn't have to come out of pocket randomly throughout the year for taxes or insurance. It was all one payment. And those 3 individuals, my friends that moved in there, those rent payments were enough to cover that monthly cost. Then the very next year, I did it again. Okay. But the cool thing is when I moved out of that house and I moved into the next house, I now had 4 people paying rent versus 3. Because it was a 4-bedroom house. The room that I lived in was no longer me, it was somebody else. So at that point in time, it really helped speed up the entire process of paying back my friends and family, because now I was bringing in around $350 to $400 a month more than my mortgage payment was. So that money went back to my investors or my people that had lent me money in terms of either an interest payment or a principal pay down on that initial loan that they had given me. So I didn't have any money when I started, guys, 0. And I used the leverage of a bank as well as my friends and family to help me raise some money to put down on that initial 20% deposit. I used another strategy there called house hacking, which I rented out those additional rooms to help cover the mortgage. And then what I did is I moved on. I went and I bought another house the very next year, even though I still had some debt or some money that was lent to me by friends and family, and I paid that back. Once I moved out, the process of paying that back actually sped up quite a bit, because now I'm bringing in, let's say, $400 extra a month. At the end of the year, that's equivalent to $4,800 in excess, or what we like to refer to as cash flow. And I use that money to like I said, pay interest payments, but also to pay back the principal of what those individuals had lent me. So I'm really happy that I did this, and I talked a lot about my first property. If you have not bought a property yet, you can do this. It is not that hard. Go talk to your local banker and figure out if you can be approved to get a loan with them. And if so, how much do you need to put down? Now, there are some strategies where you don't need the full 20%. You may only need 10%. You may only need 5%. If you are a veteran, you might not need any money down. And there are some scenarios where you may need only as small as 2.5% to 3.5% down to get into a piece of property. I highly recommend that you guys learn how to buy properties and you learn how to rent those properties out, because once you have a property that is rented out and it is generating income, you now have what I like to call an asset. And assets are what separate rich people from poor people. Poor people don't have any assets. Rich people have a ton of assets. So I appreciate you guys watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment below letting me know that you subscribed, and hopefully you'll be one of the lucky monthly shout out winners. Thanks, guys.